What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Today's video is from the line. We're going to be hearing from a caller that's decided to call in and try to prove either God to us or some other kind of crazy idea. So, if you want to fuck around and find out how crazy this call gets, then please stay tuned. So next up is Anthony. How you doing there, Anthony?
Hey, John. How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Can you hear? I'm sorry to ask this. What's your co-host name?
Justin.
I know his YouTube. Justin. Okay, I know his YouTube name is Deconstruction Zone. I tuned in a little bit ago. I heard y'all didn't have any theists. I thought I'd just call and give y'all a run for your money.
Sure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So
which God do you believe in?
I believe in, well, I just believe in the idea of an intelligent source of creation. And I do believe the Bible speaks to that. And the Bible says the name of God is Yah. I am a Christian, but I hold some unorthodox beliefs. Like, I'm not a biblical inerrantist, if that is a word.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe some things that are in the Bible. But I'm not one to say that, it's all inerrant. So I don't base my faith on the Bible.
Not to derail your discussion point, but if the Bible is not like completely true, how do you know what parts are true and what parts aren't?
Well, if there's a contradiction in the Bible, which I believe there are, like a logical contradiction,
mm-hmm.
then we have to find out where, basically, if there's a bunch of the Bible, in non-scientific terms, if there's like 99 verses saying one thing, and then there's one verse that says something that's the completely opposite, then I attribute that one verse to being some sort of like translational error or scribal error or something like that, and it leads to the contradiction. But so basically, looking at the preponderance of evidence and discerning which parts fit and which ones don't has led me to basically figure out what parts I believe in, which ones I don't.
What percentage of the Bible needs to be true before us to trust it?
Well, I would say it this way: you should trust the parts that are true, and then the question becomes, well, which parts are true?
Right.
And then that's the job of scholars and critical textual critics and things like that.
Yeah, I've studied it.
I actually have read a lot of Bart Ehrman, and believe it or not, I learned a lot from him. I actually, I'm one of those people who initially, you hear these people and you're like, oh, they're just atheists. They just hate God. They hate the Bible. They hate Christianity. But, they make some good points, and they actually did force me to reconsider some of the things that I had initially believed. And I will say, Bart Ehrman, he helped me a lot to understand some things I didn't before, and scholars like him. So
the position I have is that the problem I have with the Bible is that it's got so many false claims that I'm reluctant to take any of it seriously.
Well, you're doing what I call throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So a lot of atheists, what they'll do is they will find some error in the Bible, which exists, and then they'll say, well, the Bible isn't true, therefore there's no God. And I just think that's completely irrational and illogical.
No,
well,
I didn't do that.
So I have to push back a little bit here, because it's not that we're saying, oh, God doesn't exist. We're saying your God doesn't exist. I mean, I feel like we got pretty good reasons, to say that your God doesn't exist, considering a lot of the claims that are made about Yahweh and Jesus in particular. So, I mean, it's not God doesn't exist. It's your God doesn't exist.
Right. And there's lots of reasons to believe that. For example, the God of the Bible doesn't know how female anatomy works, yet somehow he created them. Yeah. Deuteronomy 22 gives a test. Want me to tell you? Yeah, Deuteronomy 22 provides a test for knowing if a woman is a virgin. I'll read it to you real quick. It says, suppose a man marries a woman, but after going into her, he dislikes her and makes up charges against her, slandering her by saying, I married this woman, but when I lay with her, I did not find evidence of her virginity. So when he lays with the woman, when they consummate the marriage, he's looking for evidence. Evidence is going to be pretty obviously bleeding, but we'll keep reading. Says the father of the young woman and her mother shall then submit the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate. The father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he's made up charges against her, saying that I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity, but here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Then they will spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. So the evidence of the young woman's virginity is whether or not she bled on a cloth when they consummated the marriage. And then there's punishments for whoever was lying. In verse 18, it says, the elders of the town shall take the man and punish him. They'll fine him 100 shekels of silver. So if he's lying, then he gets fined 100 shekels of silver. But if she's lying, it says, if, however, this charge is true, that evidence of the young woman's virginity was not found, then they will bring the young woman out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of her town will stone her to death because she's committed a disgraceful act in Israel. So the text here has got two huge problems. One, if the guy lies, he pays a fine. If the girl lies, she gets executed. The second problem is only about 50% actually bleed the first time that they do the deed, which means half of these women getting stoned actually were innocent.
Well, that doesn't mean that God doesn't know how the female body works. That would seem to be
he knows how the female body works. He's just a jackass.
Well, I would say that if she is a virgin, and we're talking somewhat explicitly here, if she doesn't bleed, I mean, that doesn't prove she's not a virgin, but it's evidence that she isn't. So the text is correct. Am I wrong?
It's not correct because 50% of the women.
This is disgusting.
Yeah, 50% of the women would not have bled. Based on everything we know about anatomy, and based on from ancient texts. We actually have ancient texts from a couple hundred years after this where people are complaining about that very thing.
Well, all right. Well, here's the thing. Your original claim was the God of the Bible doesn't know how the female body works.
Right, because he thinks you can determine who a virgin is based on whether or not she bleeds the first time she has sex. But you can't do that, actually.
Well, that is one way to do it. That is, it's not 100% guaranteed, but the point is,
it's not even 50% guaranteed.
The female body does this, and that is an accurate thing.
Okay, hold on. Let's circumvent this. Let's circumvent this a little bit. Let me ask you this, Anthony. Can a 12-year-old child consent to a sexual relationship?
Well, I just say, I mean, she can consent.
Oh my God!
The
fact that you can't just say no.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
No,
let me finish. No, let me finish. Let me finish. She can consent, but it wouldn't be appropriate for like an adult man.
No, she can't consent. Like, no, she's
what I'm saying is,
if
a man, what I'm trying to say is this: if somebody asked her, she can theoretically say yes, but she might be manipulated, or it's just not something that should be done, because if she consent,
call CPS. Hold on now. Someone's in his basement.
Let me correct. Hold on. I'm not saying that it should be done. I'm just saying that what I'm trying to say is, even if she theoretically says yes, it's still inappropriate because she's too young. That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's not just inappropriate. 12-year-old children cannot give their consent to sex. Like, that's what we understand. Like, psychologically, they're not prepared. Physiologically, they're not prepared.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, even if they consent, it's still not legitimate, because they're too young
I'm
to.
saying I'm stopping you before even if they consent. I'm saying no, they can't consent. Can they say yes to a situation? Sure, anybody can say yes.
That's what I'm trying to say. That I was. What
4-year-old
you
child can
said
say
can.
yes, but that
When you
doesn't mean that
say,
they consent.
what I'm saying is, when you say can they consent, you're asking do they have the ability to consent? Yes, they have that ability.
Yes, and
Does that make it
no. A
appropriate?
12-year-old child does not have the ability to consent. Now, let's relay this back to your particular God, okay? Your particular God, especially in Numbers 31, has the Israelites going in and wiping out an entire civilization with the exception of the prepubescent young virgin girls and forcing those young virgin girls into marriages to Israelite men, which God definitely puts his fucking seal on later on in Numbers 25 through like 30 or something like that, where he specifically says 1 out of every 500 little girls you are to sacrifice as a burnt offering to me, for one. For two, the rest of them you're to divvy up amongst the Israelites, equally applying them to the warring men and then the non-warring men of the civilization. So you have God specifically saying, hey, take these little girls. And as we know from, at least I've been reading Dr. Jennifer Bird's Marriage in the Bible, what the texts say, the way that you get married at this time is by having sex with the woman. And I say woman loosely here because these are children. So these Israelite men were having sex with 12-year-old children in order to marry them after those same men have utterly destroyed their entire people group. How is this okay? This is God denoting this. How is this okay?
Well, I never said it's okay. For that, and
God
honestly,
does. And if you adhere to Yahweh,
no. Well,
yeah, Numbers 31:18
this is
refers to them as hataf. That's Hebrew for children, little children. The same word is used to refer to infants.
So y'all are aware of the documentary hypothesis, correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with JDP. Yeah.
So is that not the idea that the particularly Old Testament was basically written in various stages by various groups of people, and
so I mean,
scholars have kind of
sure. If you want to take a very naturalistic and Yahweh or not non-religious view of the Hebrew Bible, sure, this is a bunch of asshole men that were writing down asshole things, that were telling other asshole men that it's okay to have sex with 12-year-old children. Sure, you could take that route.
True.
But if you're, yeah. Well, but I mean, if you're taking the route that Yahweh is real and that the Israelites are the chosen people of Yahweh and that Jesus died for our sins and all this other stuff of the Bible, I guess I just don't understand like your point in like pointing out the documentary hypothesis. It seems like you're cherry picking, your particular theology there. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Justin.
Oh, you're good.
Well, go ahead. Justin, if you wanted to say something in addition to that.
Well, I would just say, on JDP, if you're subscribing to the idea that there's some redactional history in the text and therefore we shouldn't take the text seriously, then I agree. I don't think we should take any of it seriously. So
there you go. You're throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Okay, so then how do you know that Numbers 31 didn't happen?
I'm sorry, but the baby you're talking about, the Israelites wanted to fuck. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. All right. Here's the thing.
Fact, if the text says you can do it, I want to know how you know that Numbers 31 didn't happen, but you know the other Bible passages did happen.
Well, this is the problem that when you come to some of these passages that are difficult, this would include the passages about slavery and some of the other things in there that
kidnapping women, Deuteronomy 21 and 20.
Yeah, you can. There's all kinds of them in there. I'm not gonna deny that. Okay. And they seem to be clustered in certain portions of the Bible. And this is kind of what leads these scholars to think that these are the reason they're grouped like this is because they're they're sourced by they come from a single source who added them. And for me, that actually solves a lot of problems because what it tells me is that whatever the original Bible was pure, but
What's the
somehow over
original Bible?
time, exactly, what is the original Bible? Well,
Okay.
we
how
can
could you
This
possibly
seems
know that
ad
the
we can
hoc.
original?
determine that
How could you
we can
possibly know that
determine
the
that
original Bible was pure when we don't have one?
we can't, but we can say that some parts don't fit with the others, and some of this history and some of the way it's narrated can be seen to create these logical moral contradictions. And to me, it should be considered that perhaps these weren't native to the original religious teaching.
But are they
And
true?
But
no, they're not.
So the Bible's not true.
In
Cool.
my
well, so
opinion, parts of it aren't.
right. So the Hebrew Bible, like the Old Testament, isn't true, and then we can't really know if anything about the New Testament's true, right?
We can know some parts of the Bible are true.
Are the prophets
Which
true?
parts?
Uh, some of the historical information is absolutely verifiable. Like there is biblical archaeology, and some of the people mentioned in the New Testament and Old
Mhm.
Testament are verified to exist, and some of the history has been vaguely proven, not down to like the specifics the Bible provides, but like
Oh, okay,
the Persian
Anthony.
let me give you
Sorry, I was
yeah.
just going to ask: did the Israelites fuck children?
Well, they might have, but not. It wasn't commanded by God. I would say that. Like they might have
How do you know that?
done some of these things. Well, I don't claim to know it, but I just I read it and
You
I
seem to
think to
know it.
myself like I don't claim to know it,
So
but
okay.
I
So
would
this is
say
something that's really good. Hold on, this is something that's really good because I feel like what you're saying is that, well, I would never fuck a child, so therefore I don't think my God would ever condone fucking a child. So therefore they didn't do that. Is that what you're saying?
what I'm saying is there are parts of the Bible that tell you not to do these things, and then there are some parts of the Bible where people are doing
Like
these
fuck a
things.
child?
So,
What part
well,
of the
you're
Bible
using
says
very
don't fuck a
explicit.
child?
Well, when
I'm just
Jesus
being
says
very
anyone who
direct about it. Like I don't see it. I
what
don't see it as a bad thing. Being direct about
okay,
what we're
yeah.
talking about. We're talking
Well, you
about
could use
fucking
a
a
little bit
child.
cleaner language. Yeah, you could use cleaner language, but
Would
it's
that
your
make it
show. You
better
do
for
what you
you? Would
want.
that make it more palatable?
Well, it's your show. You do what you want. I'm just, that's my
No.
opinion. But
How would you like me? How would you like for me to refer to fucking children?
do it however you want. You can do it. You can
No,
say
no,
it
no.
however you like.
You
But
seem to have a very specific. You seem to have a very specific way you want me to refer to fucking children. How would you like me to refer to fucking children that makes it more palatable for you?
I would
I
say
think the
have
Bible
relations
says
with children.
go into her. That's the word. You want to go into the children. That's the
That
biblical
would be better.
terminology. Yeah. So
But
Yeah.
the
Let
Okay.
me answer your
What?
question. Let me answer your
All
question.
right.
Let me answer your question. You said which parts of the Bible teach you not to do these things to children. All right. So Jesus very clearly says anyone who harmed a child is basically going to receive a horrible judgment on Judgment Day.
but
Did they perceive
So
that as harming a child?
thank you. Yeah.
it doesn't matter how they
Because
perceive it. It is
because
harming a child.
the ancient
No, no,
Jewish
no, no, no,
people
no, no,
didn't
no.
believe that to be the case. Have you read what the Talmud states
Yeah.
about intercourse with children?
I have not read the Talmud.
I highly recommend it. There's a section in the Talmud. You can find it in Ketuvot 11, and you can also find it reiterated in Mishnah Niddah 5:4. It says, a girl who is 3 years and 1 day old, whose father arranged her betrothal, is betrothed through intercourse. And of course, if you read the
From what
Talmud, their justification for this type of behavior, it comes directly from Numbers chapter 31. So the people who wrote the book
Numbers
seemed to believe
31
that it
says
was
you can have
true.
relations with a 3-year-old child.
Numbers 31 refers to these young women as children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what do
So
you
I'm
think they
guessing
were
there's a.
doing with these
Don't,
virgin
don't, don't you
children
think a
girls?
3-year-old? Don't you think a 3-year-old child would be a virgin?
I'm sure the Hebrew term does not directly translate to a 3-year-old child. I don't know Hebrew, but I'm going to go ahead and say whatever
I don't
term
think
is
that it
used in.
actually specifies. It just says save the virgin girls for yourself, which would include 3-year-old girls.
Okay, virgin
Yeah.
girls. You can. Are they going to stay virgins forever? There's virgin girls who are probably like 18
Obviously
years
not,
old.
because the Israelites are about to fuck them. Like, I don't know what you're talking about now. Like, they're literally, God is literally saying, "Hey, fuck these children. You can fuck
Well, here's
these
the thing.
children."
Right. But the text is pretty explicit. It literally refers to them as vakol hataf, which means all of the little children. Hataf is
Well, here's
not
the thing.
it's not a word that is used of adult women.
I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say it could potentially refer to women who are of age.
It doesn't say that
So
though.
I'm not.
You're arguing
Well,
with
it
the
also doesn't
dictionary
say
of the
it.
Hebrew
It also
language.
doesn't. It also doesn't say they're 3 years old though. So you have to admit that.
But it says that they're little children.
So, right, if I can read Victor P. Hamilton in the Anchor Bible Dictionary, it has this to say: in Rome at the time of Augustus, the legal minimum age for girls was 12 and for boys was 14. The Talmud recommends marriage for girls at the age of puberty, which would be 12 or 13. Males are encouraged to marry between 14 and 18. A girl younger than 12 and a half, according to Talmudic law, could not refuse a marriage arranged by her father. Beyond that age, her assent was essential. So basically, a father could sell his daughter into sexual slavery at that point, and as long as they were less than 12 and a half, which would include 3-year-olds. And also the whole virgin, the only thing that seems to matter in Numbers 31 was the fact that they were virgins, which 3-year-old girls would be in the whole virgin status, but also that would include any girl in that civilization that had not had sex yet. So, which would include the whole swath of girls. Meanwhile, in that same chapter, God specifically commands that even the small boys, like baby boys as well as children boys, they were to be killed. God literally ordered them to take a knife and plunge it into the chests of small baby boys as well as non-virgin girls, which would have included anybody that had already had sex. So where's the morality in all this? Where is the goodness of God? Where is, like, I guess I just don't understand your entire argument right now.
Well, let me address the Talmud. From what I understand, the Talmud is in no way authoritative to Christians. I believe it is oral. That is what is considered the oral
No,
tradition.
we're not saying that it's authoritative. What we're suggesting is that the Talmudic interpreters, the ancient Jewish rabbis, understood the text in the same way that we understand it, because the text is pretty clear in what it means.
I believe that there is agreement that the authors of the Talmud included their own opinions and ideas and added them to.
Yeah.
But in other words, they interpreted them as they felt, but it doesn't necessarily
do
mean
you
that
think that they would? Well, yeah, but don't you think that they would try to interpret what they believed God wanted, and what they interpreted
let me
from
answer
God's
it this
word?
way. No, not necessarily, because the authors of the Talmud, if you Jesus himself criticizes very harshly, severely the Jewish leaders of the time for doing exactly the things you're talking about, creating their own traditions and passing them off as the revelation of God. And they were confusing
Right,
the
and we're not
people
talking
and
about
leading them.
Jesus this time. We're not talking about the first century CE. We're talking about Numbers 31. We're talking about the Hebrew Bible,
No,
which
I'm
was
talking about the Talmud. The Talmud, I believe, was written around the time of Jesus, or maybe even after, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's
I
a
don't
little
know
more
exactly,
complicated
but
than that. So the Talmud was
Yeah.
written over a long period of time. The earliest part was the Jerusalem Talmud that actually predated Jesus by about 200 to 250 years. There are portions of the Babylonian Talmud that predated Jesus as well, and then there are some that span a good length of time. So, like parts of the Mishnah can span anywhere between 200 and 300 years. So, just like the Bible, it was composed over a long period of time, and you have to take into account that some parts of the Talmud are old and some parts are not so old.
right. Well, I believe that Jesus himself criticized these very same individuals that you are referencing right now,
Yeah.
and probably for the same. And Jesus, uh, I honestly believe Jesus was not a biblical inerrantist, because he seemed to contradict things that were written in the Hebrew Old Testament. I know that's very controversial, but
No, he
if,
does. He
if
contradicts the Old Testament all the time. That's one of the reasons why I don't
yeah,
believe that he's the Messiah, because the claims about what the Messiah was going to actually do, Jesus didn't do any of those things.
well, it's not that he didn't fulfill the prophecy. It's that he literally said
Well,
that, like,
he didn't fulfill
you
even
have heard it
one.
said, well, let me just make this point. He said, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and that's
Yeah,
from the
Matthew
Old
5.
Testament. And
Yeah, it's
yeah,
Matthew
and then
5.
but then
Yeah.
he goes around and says, "But I say unto you that, forgive those who do wrong," things like that. And so my question is, like, what is Jesus doing here? It seems to me like he's openly saying that there are parts of the Old Testament that are not to be trusted,
No,
essentially,
he's
which I think
he's
is
actually he actually reinforces the law of Moses throughout his ministry. He tweaks it here and there, like he makes it more severe, but he doesn't retract from any of it. For example, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, he quite literally states, "Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven." So Jesus is quite literally endorsing the laws of Moses. So if Jesus believed that the laws given in the Torah were worthy of being followed, then I'm confused why you don't want to reject these things.
well. One of the questions that it goes around in Christianity is, when Jesus says we must obey the law, and he does say that, what exactly, what aspects of the law is he talking about? He really doesn't clearly define it. So this is an argument that is often had in Christianity about
The law is the
what
law
is
of
the law
Moses.
that. Well, yeah, but I guess there are maybe some. And Jesus even says that there are portions of the law that are weightier than others. So
Yep.
he's saying that there are some, and if you look in Matthew 22, it says the law is summarized as essentially loving God and loving your neighbor, and that is the fulfillment of the entire Mosaic law. So it would
Yep.
seem that
Right.
Jesus has in
Hold
mind.
on. Can I tie this? Can you give me a second? Let me tie this back to what we were talking about with Numbers 31. Does Jesus ever say, "Hey, don't fuck children"? Does
I
Jesus
mean,
ever say that?
he didn't say exactly that. I don't know,
Oh, no.
but
He doesn't even imply that. He doesn't say that at
yes, he
all,
does. Yes, he does,
because
though. Yes, he
Jesus,
does. I already
where?
refuted you on that one. I refuted you on that
No,
one.
no, no. You didn't. No, you
Jesus
didn't.
said,
Where
"Don't
does
harm
Jesus say,
children."
"Hey, don't"? No. They didn't. They didn't see that as harm, though. They saw that as
It
marriage.
doesn't matter.
Like
It doesn't
that's
matter
like,
It doesn't matter what they saw. It does. Jesus is
no.
speaking the
So,
revelation
so
of
you're
God.
being. Do you know what anachronism is right now? Because you're being anachronistic. You're taking our modern interpretation of what it would be to fuck a child, and you're importing that on the Israelite people, and even in the first century, Jews and Christians, and that just doesn't make a lot of sense, because they wouldn't have seen that as child abuse. They would have seen that as marriage. That's what they thought marriage was raping a child. That's what marriage was at the time. And I get it. That's not the kind of language that really, coincides with what you have in your head, but that's what it was. It was rape. They
Jesus
raped
Jesus
children
was
in order to marry them.
Jesus was a revolutionary. His entire mission was to overthrow the existing system of that
Awesome. It's
time.
great that he was a revolutionary, and it would have been incredibly revolutionary for this revolutionary to say, hey, don't fuck children. But you know what we don't have? Jesus saying, don't fuck children. That's what we don't have. I'm sorry, Justin. I get stuck on this kind of shit, and I just run with it. I'll let you handle it.
I appreciate the righteous indignation of Doug. You're really coming to put the hammer on this Yahwistic God. So what we're getting at here is that Jesus at every turn seems to be endorsing the Mosaic Law. There's not a single instance where Jesus says don't follow the law, and he explicitly says to follow the law. I guarantee when we start reading this law of Moses, you're not going to like it. So if you believe that Jesus is a Messiah and you believe that his words matter, then I guess I'm really confused why as soon as I start reading something from the books of Moses, like you want to run away from it. Because the books of Moses permits owning slaves, it permits diddling children, it permits kidnapping women in war.
What I'm trying to say to you is when you read Matthew chapter 5, 17 to 20, and it says Jesus did not come to abolish the law, but rather
Mm-hmm.
to fulfill it.
Yep.
How can you definitively say that Jesus has in mind every single thing that's written in the law of Moses?
Well, a couple reasons, because he tells you what you need to do to be righteous. And he actually endorses the law of Moses on a number of occasions. For example, when the rich young man came to him, Luke chapter 10, 25 to 28, an expert in the law, this is a slightly different retelling of a similar story. An expert of the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must we do to inherit eternal life? And he said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? So he's pointing back to the law. The thing that allows you to inherit the eternal life is by following the law of Moses. And we know exactly what the law of Moses was at the time Jesus spoke those words.
Yeah, but here's your problem. So the rich young ruler you have in Matthew 19, and you have the lawyer in Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 28. And in those passages, Jesus does get specific about what he says, and it seems to me that he lists the commandments there that we are supposed to follow, and it's quite a narrow list. So
Yep.
to me, you can't definitively say Jesus has
two of
anything
them
in
come from
mind.
where? The two commandments come from where? In Luke chapter 20, the first commandment comes from Deuteronomy 6:5. The second commandment comes from Leviticus 19:18. So at a bare minimum, we can conclude that Jesus believes that Deuteronomy and Leviticus are authoritative.
Those portions of Deuteronomy and Leviticus.
Show me one time Jesus ever said that you're not to follow specific laws of Moses, only the ones that I'm telling you right now.
When the Pharisees tested him, he was healing people, and Jesus told a story about how David's servants ate the bread or whatever it was.
Yeah, Mark chapter 2, verse 26.
Right. So I believe that was that commandment not to eat the bread did come from the Mosaic portion of the law. So Jesus is basically sanctioning this violation of the law in certain circumstances.
Can you show me where that law is?
And in Mark, I know in Mark, I can't off the top of my head, but I know in Mark, it does
How do you
very
know that there's a
explicitly say.
prohibition? How do you know that there's a prohibition against it?
Because Jesus seems to indicate that there is. But let me get to a better one.
How does he do that?
In Mark, hold on. In Mark, it very clearly says that Jesus obviated all of the food laws.
Not from the Torah. And so you've got a second problem. You got a second problem because this is one of the clear cases where Jesus is actually saying something that is slightly metaphorical. He's literally chastising the Jewish leaders, saying that it is the thing that is coming out of your mouth that is unclean, not the food that you're putting into it. If you think that Jesus is now saying that all of the dietary laws you no longer have to follow, you've got a big problem, because he's now contradicting himself. Because elsewhere he tells you to follow the law. He says, whoever
Well, I'm
teaches
trying to
somebody
tell you,
to not follow the law will be least in the kingdom of heaven.
right? But I think, and I'm just throwing this out there. I may not be able to prove it in real time, but I think when Jesus says the law, you have to understand what law. You can say he said has the law of Moses in mind,
That's the
but
only law there is.
does Jesus have the entire law of Moses as we know it in mind, or does he have his own understanding of the
I'm
law of
sorry.
Moses in his mind?
Anthony. I have to interrupt here. This is just special pleading for the portions of the law that you don't like, because obviously the portions of the law that you like, you're not going to have a problem with Jesus like adhering to that. You're going to be like, yeah, sure, definitely. Don't cheat on your wife. That, don't lust after other people. Like, yeah, sure, that's what he had in mind. But like when we get into the nitty-gritty of the law, being like what we were actually talking about before with the fucking of children and everything like that, you're more apt to, like, I guess, give Jesus a hall pass for it. Like, you're selectively choosing which parts of the law you think Jesus would adhere to, and that seems to coincide with what you think is good or
Well, here's the
bad.
thing.
And
Here's why I'm justified in doing that. I'm justified in doing that because there are times when Jesus speaks generally about the law, and then you have to ask, well, what about the law? But whenever Jesus does get specific about the law, it never seems to refer to the controversial portions of the law. When someone asks you this, what do I have to do to get into heaven? He never says, you take
fuck a
the woman
child.
out and see if she bleeds. Take the woman
in
out,
Mark
see if she bleeds, and then kill her if she doesn't.
in Mark chapter
He never says
7,
anything.
he quite literally endorses Deuteronomy 21, the execution of the stubborn son. He's literally chastising the Pharisees and the religious leaders for making laws that would prevent them from sacrifice or from executing their rebellious sons, according to Deuteronomy 21. So
Yeah,
obviously he thought Deuteronomy
that's like
21 should be followed.
Yeah, that's like a major complaint of Jesus, is that the Pharisees are making a law for themselves rather than for God. So they're not following the laws of Moses. Like, I don't even know what the fuck you're trying to say here, other than you're just making a special pleading argument for Jesus. That seems
Uh,
just am I wrong in this interpretation that he's just specially pleading for like
you
what
You're
he
are.
not
wants
You are.
wrong.
Jesus to be in
And
support of?
not only are you not wrong,
No,
but his interpretation contradicts everything we know about the law from the Bible. For example, Luke 24:44, Jesus says to them, "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Jesus believed in everything written in the law of Moses, every single thing.
well, I still think that Jesus
I
has in his own mind what he thinks of the law. And when he gets specific
How do
about
you
what
know
he
that?
thinks the law is,
He's
well,
calling
How
Jesus
do
a
you know
here's
that?
why
liar.
I think I'm not calling Jesus a liar. I think
No, but how do
Jesus
you
has,
know that?
well, I don't know it 100%, but I will say that when Jesus says the law of Moses, everything written in it, however he phrases it, there are times when he gets specific about it. And
Yeah,
So
I want to see where
Moses was fine
it
with
has anything to
Israelites
do with
fucking children.
with slavery and
Are
abusing
you
children and
fine
things
with
like that.
are you fine with grown men fucking children?
No, I never said I was.
Moses was, Jesus was, the patriarchs of the
All
Bibles
right.
of the
Well,
Bibles were sorry, of the Bible were, sorry, that's a really weird sentence to form there. The patriarchs of the
and
Bible, they were fine with it.
I want to correct something. I want to. There's something you said at the very beginning of this conversation that I've wanted to correct since that time. You asked me which God do you believe in? There's the God of Christians is the God of everyone. So it's not like it's my God.
No,
it's everyone's God. But
He's definitely your
God
God.
no. It's
revealed.
definitely not.
But God.
We've gone over this. My
Well,
God is Doug. This is
Well,
the one true
Doug
God.
is not Yahweh. Doug is better than Yahweh. No, hold on. I have to defend Doug here because Doug is far better than Yahweh. Doug, I would hazard a bet. Maybe Justin can correct me on this, but Doug doesn't think that a grown ass man should fuck a child, but your
No,
God
never.
does. So it kind of seems like Doug is better than your God.
It definitely seems to be that way, and the whole Bible testifies to Doug being much greater. Psalm 42 says, "He drew me up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and he set my feet upon a rock." That rock is Doug, my man, and Doug has never caused anyone to rape a child.
Well, I think you're straw manning what is written and what is said.
I'm
there.
literally not. We're literally not strawmanning anything. Your God, Yahweh, in the Bible multiple times commands the raping of small children. How do you feel about that?
I don't believe that's true. So I don't
Right,
feel
so the
bad
parts
about
you
it.
don't like aren't true. Cool. So Jesus is
No,
wrong.
it's not.
I don't like
I don't
facts.
even think. I don't think you actually demonstrated that the violation of small children is actually something that occurs by the command of God
We literally,
at any point.
I do you want me to read literally from Numbers 31? Like, is that what it's going to take? Because I can
You already did number
read from
31,
Numbers 31.
and we already went around this circle, and we already established that.
Okay, I can
the
go to
word
Genesis
did not.
29. Do you want me to go to Genesis 29
Hey,
with
All right, so that would be
Jacob and
something
Leah
new.
and Rachel and all them?
John, can you read
Do you
John
want-
1:17?
John 1:17.
I got it pulled
You're
up
also
if
there?
you don't if you don't have it.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yep, I'm
I've
here.
got the law indeed was given through Moses. What law was given to Moses? Where can we find a law that was ever given to Moses? Where in the Bible could we find this?
it would be in Exodus
Maybe the books of the law.
and Deuteronomy.
Yeah, the books of the law.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Exodus 20:17 lists women as property and that slaves are also property. Do you consider women in your life to be property?
Well, first of all, let's actually read what it actually says. It might
bad
say
text
that, but
doesn't.
Oh, great. I love Exodus 20:17. Let's all turn in our Bibles to Exodus 20:17, where it says, "You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or woman," specifically, the Hebrew word there is woman, "male or female slave, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs, like as property, to your neighbor." So, do you treat women as a matter
oh my
of
gosh.
adhering to the Ten Commandments? Do you treat women as property?
See, I'm really glad I asked you to do that because now we know the context, and now we can see that you're using a very loose interpretation of the word belongs. So,
No. I'm using
why.
the NRSV UE edition that says, "Don't covet
Right,
your
it says
neighbor's
belongs,
house, which
but
is property. Do not covet your neighbor's ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor," meaning property. But that also includes wife, male, and female slave, which are also property.
no, it never says that. It never says the woman is property. You made that up. It doesn't.
I
We just read it.
literally read it off of the page.
Okay,
No,
read it
Exodus
again. I want to
2017.
hear it again. I want to hear it
Justin,
again.
Okay.
I want to hear you
Justin,
read the whole
did I
thing
read
again.
it incorrectly? I'll have Justin fucking read it since I'm apparently just hallucinating what's on the fucking page. Justin, you read it.
So we can elucidate this pretty clearly because the Hebrew text says "Vaikol isher la reaka," which quite literally means anything that is of your neighbor. Anything that is
right. So your wife is kind of you. Oh, go ahead.
Nope. Here it's denoting belonging. Anything that is of your neighbor, just like his donkey, just like his house, just like the other properties that are listed.
I think that based on my memory of what you just read, it says, do not covet your neighbor's house, your
Yep.
neighbor's wife.
Is a house
And
property?
it's listing a number of things that you might covet that
belong
are
to your neighbor,
part of
like slaves.
slaves,
slaves.
Do you,
Okay,
you
yeah,
and
think
women.
all right.
maybe you think maybe the Hebrew scholars who translated this didn't know what they were doing when they indicated that these are belongings of the neighbor?
I don't think it necessarily means belongs in a property or a chattel sense. I think
Okay, so you know Hebrew
it's
better
like
then.
well, there are love songs that say, like you belong to me. It's not like you're my property. Come on now. I mean, it
There's
just
always
doesn't.
words.
It does.
Always words don't mean words with these people. Words never have meanings. Remember, that's why you
I
need
honestly,
guys. Go and get on Amazon. You can
I
get a Holy Spirit decoder ring to know which words you have to change.
and
Yeah.
I
So
want to hammer this
listen.
home.
Okay, Anthony, I want to commend you because you have this construction of God and Jesus in your mind that does not condone the fucking of children, as well as not taking women or considering women property. I have to commend you for that. But at the same time, you have to understand that your Bible and your God definitely considers women property and that it's perfectly okay to fuck children. Like, those are the two things out of this conversation that we have to agree to because it's just right there in your theology. It's right there in your Bible. Like, these are things that are literally printed on a fucking page. You can't sit there and be like, well, that's not what he meant. Because it literally is what he meant. It's literally what the text says. Like, Justin read off the literal Hebrew of it. Like, I don't know Hebrew. I would say that I'm translation, like I can translate it properly, but like he's been to seminary, right? Like, he's got degrees in this shit. I don't, but he agrees with me on this. Like, God is literally saying here, you can own women as property. Women are considered property. Genesis, I believe it's Genesis 29, that has Jacob and Leah and Rachel. They literally sell women for work. Like Jacob does work for Laban and purchases. I don't know how much I have to actually emphasize this. He purchases. Like, you go to Best Buy and you buy a fucking laptop, he purchases women in the same way with his labor, right? And then, just to add insult to injury, after that point, God fucks with the fertility of Leah and Rachel and then forces them to force their slave women, the concubines, to have children with Jacob. How can you justify this? How can you sit there and be like, no, God doesn't allow you to fuck children or rape women, when he literally, in the very first fucking book of your holy book, says, hey, rape women to have children. That's literally what it says.
It's not literally what it says, and I will end on this. I think I have successfully refuted your very loose and intentionally mendacious and negative interpretations
Did
of
he
the
say
text,
mendacious?
and that might not actually be a word. I think I said tendacious, but I don't think
I
that's a
think
word.
you.
Anyway,
I think you want mendacious, but that's poppycock. I don't think that we had a mendacious interpretation.
whatever the word is, your intentionally negative and warped interpretation of the text that it
Well,
doesn't literally say what you say it does.
can I ask you a question?
And yeah,
It seems to me like no matter what the Old Testament says, you still believe that Jesus is like special, right? What did Jesus do that would warrant such honor to him?
he revealed God's purpose for us.
How?
He preached it to us. He told us how we get to heaven
Yeah, but how do you know what he said is true?
through the record of the gospel.
I have. I've read the whole thing, and it's full of bad predictions. Jesus didn't even fulfill his own predictions. Have you read Matthew 16:27 through 28, where he says that he's going to come back with all of the angels and he's going to judge everybody before all of his disciples have passed away?
Yeah, this is a point of discussion. So sometimes when they're speaking prophetically, sometimes
It's
the
not a
language has to be understood
it's not a prophecy.
symbolically.
It's just him saying what he's going to do. It's not artistry. It's not poetry. He's quite literally saying, I'll pull up for you, Matthew 16:27 and 28. He literally says to his disciples standing there, the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and he will repay everybody for their deeds. Truly, I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And they all tasted death. They're all gone. Jesus is a liar.
Yeah, I think that when you say they will not die before they see these things, so you have
Mhm.
to ask, like, when Jesus gives this, it is a prophecy. It is something that will happen in the future that hasn't happened yet, right?
Yeah, but he tells you
So
when it's
this,
going to happen. He said it's going to happen. Says some of
right,
you
but
standing here will not taste death before you see the Son of
well,
Man coming in his kingdom.
yeah. So in the Old Testament, it said that there's going to be like a small ox that eats a giant ox, and that's a prophecy, right? But that was a
That's
prophecy of a famine that was
you're
going to
referring to
come.
the drop, yeah,
So
the prophecy of Joseph.
yeah, so when there was the king had a vision, the Pharaoh had a vision, and he
Okay,
said,
so
like, what is this?
when Jesus talks about his second coming, it's a metaphorical second coming.
It could be, it could
Okay,
be.
so then literally all of Matthew chapter 25 we can throw away then, because Jesus describes this coming on the clouds with the angels in Matthew chapter 25 verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all of the angels with him, he will sit on the throne of his glory, and all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And then you know what happens, he parts them out, he sends some to paradise and some to hell. So that's all a metaphor. None of that's actually going to happen.
Are you sure that Matthew 16 and Matthew 25 are speaking of the same event?
Yeah, look at Matthew 25, verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory with all of the angels with him. And then you go to
Uh
Matthew
huh.
16:27. He says quite literally the same thing. I'll pull it back up again. Matthew 16:27 through 28 says, the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father. Exactly the same wording that he used in Matthew chapter 25 of his second coming. So you can't tell me that Jesus is talking about a metaphorical coming when he talks about it a dozen times. He says the same thing in Matthew 24. He even tells Caiaphas, the high priest, in Matthew chapter 26, that you will hereby see me coming on the clouds.
These could be things that. All right, so I'll have my own theory about these things. I'm not sure if it's a scholarly opinion. I can give it to you, but these might not be things that we see with our physical eyes, but that we see once we've passed on, and this is kind of the judgment that falls upon us.
He says it's happening
Where
before his disciples pass on. He says, truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming. Where's he coming to?
I mean, literally, you could interpret that to say that there will be a visible coming of Jesus in the clouds. I
Yeah,
will yield that. So,
exactly. That's the whole New Testament preaches over and over again that Jesus is coming on the clouds in fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7, when the kingdom is handed over from the Father to the one who is like the Son of Man. It's a direct fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7. Jesus thought he was going to fulfill Daniel chapter 7 when he came back in his second coming, which is why he mentions it like a dozen times. But he never came
I will
back.
say he didn't. He I will the when something I've detected in my own studies is that when there is prophetic revelation, it is usually not something to be seen as like even the entire book of Revelation. It's not something to be seen as something that will literally happen in reality.
Okay, so then Jesus
So
didn't literally fulfill any of the messianic prophecies.
uh, the things that he was saying, he was discussing, about his own prophecies that he was giving may not be literal.
No,
And it would
what I'm
seem
asking,
that they're
Matthew and John are very specific. They say that Jesus did things in order to fulfill what was written by the prophets. So I'm asking
right. But
you, if the prophecies don't need to be literally fulfilled, then is it safe to say that Jesus didn't literally fulfill any of the messianic prophecies?
no, that's not correct, because the Old Testament prophets talked about the coming Messiah,
Yeah,
and they
what
said
they
that
say
he would
about him?
fulfill. They said a lot of things about him, but like you
Mhm.
have the suffering servant and things like that. There's all
That's
kinds of
that's
in the
Israel.
Gospel of Matthew. There are disputes about this. Yeah, I mean, some people
Okay,
say it's
Anthony.
yeah.
Anthony, sorry, we've been on for nearly an hour now, so I
Okay.
think that we need to let you go. But it's been great having the conversation with you, and maybe you can call in another time.
All right. Thank you for taking my call.
All right, cheers, man.
All right, thank you so much, there,
All right, bye.
Anthony. Appreciate you so much, and it was an interesting conversation. Well, heathens, that's going to be it for this call today. If you want more of this kind of content, you can hit up the links down in the description to go and subscribe to the line here on YouTube. We're always producing great live content where we take callers from people. We're also adding new shows all the time. So please go down there, subscribe to the line so that you can get more of this kind of content. I'm not sure if this was 20 seconds or anything like that, but yada, yada, yada. Jimmy, go fuck yourself.